front side of a greenhouse, and they're a little bit protected. They get the afternoon sun and evening sun, and they're thriving. They're doing great. I mean, normally you're going to have to water them 2 or 3 times a day because, again, you get so much transpiration out of the leaves as the plants get bigger. But the Chinese will take a small pot and put it inside a larger plastic pot and fill it up with water. So it moderates the temperature, keeps the plant hydrated, and you're not constantly watering your plant, so it's a little bit easier.
You just take it out when you want to show people it or have it on display or have people over for dinner or something, then you have the ornamental pot really for display.
Precisely, and like this pot that Lily just brought over to us, you know, it's only about 4 inches in diameter, and the plant's got some good 3-4 inch leaves on it, as well as its few floating leaves. This particular plant hasn't popped any buds yet, but we had one lantern in Qinghai that produced, I think it was 8 buds, and it was in a little bit larger pot, but it's one of our favorite growers and bloomers. And keep in mind with the micro lotus, the flower is nice, but what especially the Chinese are looking at is the aesthetics. So you look at the pot, you look at the leaves, you look at the aerial leaves, and then ultimately the bud. If you get a flower, that's nice as far as they're concerned, but really it's the bud and the leaves combined with the pot, and then if you put it on a stand, that makes the package that they honor. Kind of like what they do for cymbidiums, the orchids. I mean, that's a whole culture there, much higher class, if you will, where people really are intent on producing a magnificent display. And again, the flowers are nice, but it's really the leaves of the pot that sell the plant.
And the same thing with bonsai. The flowers are, part of the natural cycle of the season, but they're working with bonsai because of the forms, the leaves, the branches, all sorts of other things. And the flowers are not one of the crazy things about lotus leaves is the way they're hydrophobic. The water beads up on them. It's kind of mesmerizing to watch it roll around on the leaves like mercury kind of.
Oh, exactly, and that's another reason, you know, if you don't get a lot of flowers, and some varieties only produce 4 or 6 flowers a year, others can produce 20 to 30. But the leaves themselves, we've got the new variegated lotus, so that's a little bit different leaf pattern all in all. But the way they repel the water, in fact, this morning I just posted some photos on our Facebook page of the morning dew, and the beads of water are just hanging off the edge of the leaf. It's really pretty cool, as well as the beads of water on top of the leaf. So it's pretty unique and special. And earlier this year we had that ice storm. I think it was in March or so. So we had some of the old leaves, old buds and stems up there. And the way the ice hung off of it was just really remarkable. It was a lot of fun.
Are the leaves edible?
Yes, the leaves are edible. They're a bit bitter. Usually what they use them for is a wrapping. And they'll cook rice and various things in there and steam it.
More like a banana leaf.
Yeah. They're not commonly eaten, not like the tuber and the seeds.
Larry now is with us, and Lily as well, of Bergen Water Gardens, and it's a gorgeous day out here. Lotus Fest will happen next weekend. Rain or shine, what kinds of things would people expect other than lots of lotus in bloom when they come next weekend?
Well, this is our first venture at it. You know, I'd like to do some programs and talk, but I've also learned it's really hard to get people out today with the internet. I used to do classes years ago, so what I'm going to do is actually put together a PowerPoint of my recent trip with different plants and have it here on the porch here of the pole barn, and people can watch that. We're going to have some food. We've got lotus pizza, which the guys up at Pontillo's are graciously making for us, and they said they don't mind putting the extra topping on.
A request they've never had before.
Exactly. In fact, we picked up one last night, and there were some different kids working there, and they were kind of freaking. They looked at us and said, "Why would you want to eat that? It's got holes in it. Looks like Swiss cheese." I don't know. It's just too foreign for me. But
it's not a powerful flavor though. Really, it's maybe more kind of like a potato in the sense of a starch.
Exactly. It really has not much flavor at all, but with the pizza it kind of blends in actually quite well. But last time we actually took the lotus chips and we marinated them in one of the hot pot sauces, and that added a bit of a zing to it, and that was kind of an interesting take on it, putting that on pizza. So we're kind of playing with that a little bit and experimenting. The other thing we've got here for you to try later is some lotus starch, which is what the Chinese translation is. I'm sure we can come up with an elegant name for it. But it's ground up lotus tuber, and it's basically like a tapioca or
Yeah.
pudding or a jello. And if you
That
add,
sounds like a great idea. I love those things.
and actually it's great. I mean, the Chinese like to serve it hot, like they do many of their foods, but it actually tastes good cold too. If you mix in some of the fresh fruit that you were mentioning earlier, some of the currants or blueberries or that, it actually is a great treat. And the local Asian market on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road, they have a huge selection. They got a couple different brands, and we'll be doing a post actually on our website, on Facebook, although so you can see what it looks like if you're looking for the package. But
Right.
that's one food that all of the people who've tried it so far really enjoy.
And that market carries so many things. It would be very helpful to have the a photo of the packaging. So I've been in there looking for things, and they have thousands of things to choose from. It's a cool market on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road. And Larry has been working on, and Lily as well, on some ponds. Oh, you're doing something like 50 in the end of these 5 by 5 foot ponds up near the road, so they're more visible when people drive by. What's your strategy with those, and why did you choose 5 by 5? And what was your thought process in putting together these display ponds?
Well, in part it was dictated by the size of a liner. I can get a 50-foot roll of a 10-foot wide liner. So when you figure a couple feet for each side, and then 5 by 5, now I'm at 9.5 feet, so 10 foot works out well. So that's why we did it. And we figured we could keep the symmetry good. It looked like it was a large enough volume to grow the plants, which it has been. And they've been remarkably successful. We have some plants now that are 4 years old up on top, and some freshly planted ones right before I went to China and after China, and we'll be doing a few more today. But yes, our goal is, we went from 30 at the end of last year. We're at 47 right now. My goal is to get to 55 by next Thursday. Last night we had a setback with the thunderstorms that came through. The one pond was actually solid clay, and it filled up with 24 inches of water, and it just stayed there. So I had to pump it out, and it dried out a little bit overnight, and I was able to get the liner in this morning. So we're back at it. But that's the first time that's happened. But I knew when I was digging it with our John Deere, and it took almost 30 to 40 minutes to dig it, that it was solid clay. If we were doing it by hand, like pond number 1, that one took us 3 days to do with 2 of my employees.
We've now left because it was so much fun. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if they've left, but I hand dug a pond with my father at my parents' house in Rome, New York, when I was growing up, and it was not clay; it was rock. We had to actually use a pickaxe to dig it, and luckily he thought to put up kind of an awning over it because it was weather like we've been having, about 95 degrees, when we decided to dig that pond. If you have this clay here, do you really need a liner?
Well, we don't want the lotus to escape. We were actually at a garden in China, and the lotus had pierced the side of the ponds. It was growing through the walkways, popping up everywhere. So we don't want that to happen. At least with the liner, we've got them contained, and I don't expect that it will hold water well enough to do that. Now, when we eventually do a pond behind greenhouse number 5, we'd like to do a natural pond. And in this area, most of the people are able to dig and retain water just fine. So we'll use that as an overflow pond and a source for rainwater, whatnot.
But lotus aren't invasive the way bamboo is, for example. Bamboo can be almost impossible to get rid of if you have some of the invasive species of bamboo.
Well, that's true, yeah. Bamboo is in a class all by itself. I remember seeing one garden in New Jersey that was totally inundated. I think she said it was 7 dump trucks of bamboo that they pulled out of the garden when they finally removed it. It was just incredible. But lotus themselves, we always recommend that we keep them in pots or in a liner pond. We don't want to introduce them into the environment because they can run 20 feet in a year easily, and they can spread. History has shown that there was a real nice collection on one of the Finger Lakes, but that ultimately died. That was back in the late 1800s, and I guess that was quite popular for people to see, but I guess a fungus hit it or something. And then in Sodas Point had a large lotus collection, and in fact the historian up there tells me that they ran a train from New York City to Sodas Point to come and see the lotus, and that they were very popular. And of course the irony is lotus are native to New York State. lutea, the yellow, and I have yet to find a stand here in New York State that's successfully growing. But there are some in Wisconsin, Maryland, all the way down to Mexico, and up to northern, well, actually southern Ontario, about Zone 3.
Zone 3, that's tough. Zone 3 is quite cold. We're zones, 5, 6, verging on a 7 here in our area.
Yeah, no, they work themselves up fairly far north. In fact, there's the red lotus, Columbo nucifera, goes all the way up into Siberia. So there's some populations up there. So there are some tropical forms, and hybridizers like using the tropical forms because they tend to bloom longer, like a lot of plants are tropical. So that's where sometimes we get a little dubious on the actual hardiness, and we might get a plant now and then that doesn't seem to winter over. There's one that we're growing called Ultimate 1,000 Petals. It's a beautiful double flower, 400 or 500 petals. It's just magnificent. The problem is the last 2 years it hasn't made it through the winter. So we're not quite sure if it is a hardiness issue. We replanted it again this year. It's such a striking flower. It belongs up in front and part of the collection for people to see. It's right on the road. And the flowers will be on there through October, so it's great. But we'll have to see. It's kind of odd. This one variety, 2 years in a row, hasn't made it.
But that's kind of what your display gardens do. It's part research.
Exactly, because a lot of these varieties have been growing in China, some of them for decades, some of them only 5 years, 3 years, so they're brand new cultivars. And really, they're growing them in China. Beijing is very comparable to Rochester as far as the weather, but you've got a lot of hybridizers down in Guangzhou, southern China, which would be more comparable to Georgia or Florida.
Well, the lotus will be in bloom next week. We can guarantee that. They're in bloom right now. You don't have to wait till next weekend to come out to Bergen Water Gardens. What are your general hours during the summer months?
Well, we're here 10 to 5 daily, Monday through Sunday. But what we're going to do next weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is we're going to make sure we're here at 8 a.m. As I mentioned earlier, if you like to take photographs, sometimes lighting's a little bit better, but a lot of the single lotus are open only until about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then they tend to close. So we're just going to get ourselves over here and let people enjoy the plants if you want to come out a little bit earlier.
All right, BergenWaterGardens.com online. We'll take a quick break. Be back after words from our sponsors here on WY.